is the Business Playbook.
Welcome to the Business Playbook with Made Brave's Andrew Dobbie. Made Brave are a global strategic branding agency who work with clients like Google, Diageo, Hard Rock, Doritos, KPMG and the BBC. Throughout this podcast, Andrew shares his story from launching Made Brave with £1,000 in his bank and a 2-week-old baby, growing a best-in-class team to working with some of the biggest brands in the world. Please subscribe to the channel, please drop us a comment below and let us know what you think, and please share this. Andrew Dobbie, everyone. So, Andrew is the founder and CEO of Made Brave. Made Brave are a global strategic branding agency. They work with some of the biggest brands on the planet: Google, Diageo, Doritos, Hard Rock, KPMG, BBC. But I think the best way for me to give you an idea of what Made Brave do would be to explain it to you if I was in a pub. And the way that I would explain who Made Brave are is I would show you this brief. First bus came to Made Brave and said, we are releasing 75 new buses into the market or into the fleet. And I've seen this brief and worked in advertising for 10 years. I've seen this brief come in and out of loads of different creative services and loads of really shite ads out the back of it. Like, oh, we've come and sit on our buses, there's leather seats and USB chargers and shocking. Oh, you see it on the telly, you'll hear it on your radio, you'll see it on YouTube ads. But Made Brave genuinely approached things a wee bit differently. So what they'd done was, do you remember those wee cars that you used to get when you were younger that came in wee boxes? Made Brave created a 1-to-1 scale full-size bus and put it right in the middle of George Square in Glasgow. It's a great example of the type of work that they do. The results are people take photos, you're on social, but we are going to get a chance to delve into Andrew's playbook that took him from this office to this office in Glasgow. It's always been one of my favourite agencies, so I'm excited to get dived in, talk about your culture and everything that makes you tick. So, Andrew, we like to, partly stolen from, partly inspired by the High Performance Podcast, we like to ask the same, we're going to ask the first question, the same first question to every guest. So, it was based on the night before the first podcast where I was having to buy the drink at like 2 minutes to 10 and go home and iron my clothes and everything else. And I went home and said, you know, some people must actually have their shit together. I'm not one of those people, but you have this massive agency and work with all these global brands. So do you have your shit together?
I still do not have my shit together.
Right. So I've followed you from the Buzz Lightyear era. Right, which is the people who followed Made Brave will know what I mean, but that's probably about 2013, 2014 that I've been kind of on your journey. But you are also, not just that, you're also the first guest on the Business Playbook that's ever pied me for a job application. However,
He's putting me on the spot, isn't he? There's some of the
you're
sweat trickled down.
you're not the last. The person that we've got speaking in May pied my job application, and August.
It's because I knew you were an entrepreneur.
Well, thanks for that. Cheers. So you're not the first, but can we start with your early life, your pre-Made Brave life? Can you tell us a bit about where you came from up to Made Brave, if you like?
Yeah, well, I've got quite an interesting story that I don't tell often, actually, and I'll maybe delve into it a little bit here. But I was actually born in Edinburgh, and at 30 days old, when I was in the womb, my mum became really ill, actually. My birth mum became really ill. And 30 days later, I was adopted. And so I was, my first name, actually, I was born Stephen Jacks, was my name. Right. And I was adopted into the family, the Dobbie family, and I fortunately got adopted into a really great family and lived in West Linton, then Pennycook, moved my way west all the way to Biggar, and then eventually...
Working your way down.
Working, I know. Well, the good thing is I have salt and sauce and salt and vinegar on my, you know, I can, you know, some people get a nosebleed when they come east to west, but I'm okay, I'm both camps here. But yeah, no, I grew up in Biggar in South Lanarkshire, and when I was 18, moved to Glasgow. And sort of to fast forward that little bit there, just because you mentioned the Buzz Lightyear bit.
Yep.
So I grew up and I didn't realise that I had a brother. And
Okay, cool.
I was adopted into this family where I had a brother and a sister, but they were also adopted, right? So we're kind of a wee collection of people called the Dobies. And
Not the gardens.
and yeah, basically, yeah, exactly. If only that was mine. But you know, when I was in my late 20s, just before Made Brave started, my birth mum got back in touch with me, because they can do that. They can kind of approach the adoption agency, and they came and I said to my mum, "Would like to meet Andrew. Is that okay?" And my mum was great, because she was like, "Absolutely, go and meet. You got to meet your birth mum," kind of thing. So she was dead supportive. And when I met her birth mum, she's still unwell, mentally unwell, just from birth, basically, from my birth. But she said, "You've got a brother." At one point, she'd got better, and so she said, "You've got a brother." So I had a brother, a younger brother,
Cool.
Ryan, and I met him, and you know, I now chat to him every single day, and he's an entrepreneur. And I was like, "So what are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm just about to start a business." And he's the founder of a business called Flavorly.com, if you've come across Flavorly. So
yeah.
Ryan O'Rourke is my brother.
Really?
And yeah, so I branded
Dragon Slayer, Ryan.
Yeah, the
O'Rourke.
Dragon
Brilliant.
Slayer is on Dragon's Den.
A really interesting story about him on Dragon's Den.
Uh-huh.
Went on Dragon's Den, didn't get investment, and then the night before it went live, he changed the website to like a crowdfund investment page. So everyone who watched it on Dragon's Den went on, seen it as a crowdfund, invested, and he got the money.
So
That's
they
your brother.
they offered
Class.
him. They offered him, you know, all dragons offered him a deal. One of them offered him a job, and they offered him 70 grand for 20%, and he raised 500 grand for 8% that night. By
Dragon
launching.
Slayer.
So it's been really nice, because I branded Flavorly with him, and now our two businesses grew at the same time.
Yep.
And interestingly, because you talked about Buzz Lightyear, when I started Made Brave, I used to use this hashtag to infinity and beyond. I just love Pixar and all that stuff. And when I met him, I said, "Oh, you've got tattoos." And I said, "What tattoos have you got?" And he had to infinity and beyond tattooed
Really?
on his chest.
Is that not
And
one of the-
He
that's
didn't
one
even
of-
know me by then at that point.
Amazing.
So it's really cool.
That's a class story. Brilliant. Great start. Made Brave.
Yeah,
Should we get into
Yeah.
the business side of things? So
absolutely. Yeah.
you started Made Brave when or how long ago?
So my son was born in 2011, Finlay, and when he was just a couple of weeks old, I'd been working for Paul McStay, Scotland, Celtic and football captain, and I'd been working for him for 8 years in this tiny little micro agency. I was a graphic designer, and I did sort of websites. I'm definitely not a web developer, by the way, but I did at that point. And I'd been working there, and when Finn was born, I was like, shit, I'm going to need some more money. I wasn't on much. I think I was on sort of mid 20 grand salary. And I thought my wife Pam was going to stop work, and I was going to have to pay for childcare and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just kind of the trigger for me to go, right, I better leave my job. So it was either going to be called
Left the job
Made
because
Brave.
you were having a baby.
Yes, basically. I know. I was kind of either going to be called Made Brave or Plain Daft. I went with Made Brave, and you know, it was just money driven at the time. I was just like, shit, I need to make some more money, and so I went out, and in that first year, I did baby photography, because I thought I'm going to be around new mums and dads, and I'd sort of seen the little niche in America where where they wrap them up and they look dead cute in wee bundles, and no one was really doing that in the UK. I tried that, and it was a disaster, because they don't really do what they're told, babies, and
Nah.
they're not on a schedule. And,
Also, it's only your first child you do that with.
Uh-huh.
Second child, you're like, nah,
I
you're
know.
fine. iPhone photos will do for you, son.
I know, we've not even got a photo of her. I did wedding photography as well for the first, I don't know, I think I did 8 weddings in the first.
Sorry, question on the baby photography.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever use this tactic? I went and got photos taken of my beautiful wee boy when he was like 2 months old, and this evil tactic where they've got like 60 photos, and you whittle them down and whittle them down. And you're like, right, so you look at the packages, and you can have 5 photos for 500 quid, or 10 photos for £1,000,000 or whatever it was. And they said, right, okay, we're going to take 10 photos. And they're like, okay, there's 60. Not what 10 would you like to buy, what 50 would you like to delete? Which, by the way, is a much worse process. Like deleting 50 photos, and you end up with 25 because you're like, nah, we can't delete that one. So, did you ever do that?
That was
That's
not
why
my
it was a
technique. Yeah,
disaster.
exactly.
That's why
That
it
was
was
that was the winning. That's why. Yeah, exactly. So that first year, I thought I'm going to try the baby photography thing. I'm going to try the wedding photography, and obviously I'd been trained, I suppose, or self-taught as a graphic designer, and I was doing that, and very, very quickly, I just realised I loved the kind of business side of getting out there and finding business. And so very quickly I turned off the baby photography, turned off the wedding photography. And in that first year, I just, I let it be known, I knew nothing about business at all, nothing. I can't even spell the word entrepreneur now, right? I have to Google it every time. I didn't even know that word existed until I was 30 either. And
So were you 30 at this stage?
I was 30 years old,
Cool.
yeah, and skint and a baby on the way or just arrived, and I just went out and my mate Grant gave me a space in his little office. I think you had it up there, and I bit his hand off. It was a terrible office. I tell him that, so don't worry. But so I did all my meetings in Starbucks at that time.
Did you not bring clients into that meeting and pretend that everyone was your team?
Not in that office.
Right.
So I used to do Starbucks first because it was a nice environment, and then I knew I would just sort of do the work that was required. And I was doing every hour of the day at that point. And I would come home at night, my wife Pam would be like, "There you go, there's Finn." And I'd be like, "Oh, I've got Finn." And I was knackered. I was going home at night. I had stress headaches. That first year was it was painful. I'm not going to glamorize it. It was tough. But by the end, I moved after about 6 months, I think, into a space in Glasgow called South Block. You had to be a creative company to get in there, and I was one of the first people that went in. And I shared with 3 or 4 freelancers, and I used to pretend clients would come in and I'd be like, "Yeah, this is the team," and they would do the exact same. So it was like a perception thing, which often you have to kind of fake till you get to a point. And I did that, and there was a really talented designer that sat across from me, a guy called Graham, and he had been freelancing for about 10 years, and he was fed up of people not paying invoices and all the kind of stuff that comes with business. And he was like, "I think I'm just going to join the police." But he was the best designer, and I've realised now I was a very average designer now that I've met good designers. And he was leaps and bounds, Graham was leaps and bounds better than me. And I said, "Well, why didn't you work for me?" And he said, "Andrew, I need about 30 grand. I've got kids," and I was like, "Shit, I don't have 30 grand." But I had literally squirreled away probably about 7, 8, 9 grand, something like that at the time. And I thought, someone sort of said to me, you don't need 30 grand for that first hire. And it's often the biggest hurdle when you're starting a business is how do you make that hire? And the way I looked at it was 30 grand broken down into a month is about 2.5 grand. And in the UK, we have probation, right? It's 3 months. You hope you never have to use it, but if you do it, that's what it's there for. So the risk was 7.5 grand. And I thought, well, I've kind of got 7.5 grand. And I'm kind of the person of, if I'm putting my money down, I'm going to make sure I make more than his 7.5 grand. And so I did that, and Graham was on board, and then by the end of the year there was 6 people, by the end of the year there was 16, and then it just kind of went from there.
Same model. So basically we're going to grow because we've got this much and we're going to put that away.
I mean, it's got a little bit more intelligent, I'd hope, right? Because honestly, no, see at the beginning, I knew nothing. I couldn't, I was saying to you earlier on, I was like, I didn't know what a balance sheet was. Like, I was trying to figure out what profit and loss meant, and someone asked me...
That office, it's 20 grand a month. I've got 20 grand now.
Well, honestly, I think you've got to have naivety to get through some of it, because I think if you knew what was coming and some of the things, you wouldn't do it. So, that first couple of years I was learning, let's put it that way. But right. I enjoyed that part of the journey, and I don't know where I was going there. But
so the risk. So I can relate to the story. I've had 2 proper career jobs. I've got 2 children, and I pretty much quit both jobs when I had each child. So I can relate to that. Do you think that risk? Did you ever think about, shit, I'm going to quit my job, and what if I don't? What if it's not successful? Did you not think about that?
I kind of just thought, I'll always be able to do something. I'm one of these people, I've got about 1 million hobbies, and I've always tried to make myself have a way to make money doing something. So I do close-up magic, weirdly, and when I was younger, when I was younger, I used to do close-up magic in bars and pubs and stuff like that. We'll do that after. That's later on, when you're buying the round. I was a photographer, had graphic design. I had all these little tools in me, and I thought, well, I've always have a way. But I think in terms of risk, I think the biggest risk is not taking a risk at all. And I had a friend who was really entrepreneurial, and he kept on saying to me, he said, you will smash it, you'll do amazing. And I thought, I used to sit in that first agency that I worked for, and I was there for 8 years. I thought no one would have me. I would look at other agencies and go, that looks good in there. It looks really, but I'm not good enough. And I think we probably all have a bit of that in us somewhere that you think.
I didn't. I applied for the job and got pied.
It's because you were an entrepreneur. No, but I think it's like, it's also a Scottish thing. It's like we think we're not good enough, but so honestly, see, over the last 10 years, I've travelled all around the world. Like, just I'm just lucky with the job. You get to travel and meet people and New York and all these places, and they're just the same. They're just the same as us.
Okay.
They're no different.
You've done Silicon Valley, you've done New York, you've done the Miami trip.
Yep.
And was that all in a similar, like, going to
Yeah,
see
they've all
different
been kind of like,
agencies
I've been on so many trade missions now. So
Yep.
like the 2015, I went to Facebook, Twitter, Pixar, all these businesses, and I got an inside look at them. And when I chatted to people, I'm like, we're just as good. We're just as, and so it gave me a huge amount of confidence in my ability and my team's ability. And
Did it make you think bigger? I've had a few people that have been then gone to Silicon Valley and they come back and they're like, right, I need to like
yeah,
think bigger everywhere I go.
absolutely, because I think when you're here, it feels so far away and it feels so Hollywood and
Yep.
kind of. But when you get there, you realize, oh, it's just the same, and it's just. And I think if you can get your head into that space and realize that we're all just little human beings trying to figure out the same sort of journey, and you start to realize the world is malleable, that you can make things happen if you just kind of put the effort in and kind of put yourself in the position to get luck.
Brilliant. Really like that. So you were Andrew Dobby, freelance photographer, designer.
Yeah, that first year.
At what
yeah.
point does Made Brave, the brand, come into it?
Yeah, so I think when I first went out, it was like I had to be quick. So I think like most people usually pop your name up, don't you? And kind of I did that thinking people will sort of search and find me.
Yep.
But yeah, very quickly I realised shit, I better create a brand. I better do what I was doing. And I suppose back then I was really just a graphic designer, and I wasn't a brand expert. You know, I'm still probably not, but I'm getting there. I've learned a lot over the last 10 years. But at the beginning, I was kind of just figuring it all out. So I thought I better create this, and I suppose I always wanted to create something bigger than me, if you like. And early on in the journey, I realized, well, sometimes I've spoken to a lot of creative people that their businesses stop at a point, and it's sometimes because, and it's not a bad thing, it's like they want to be the creative director, they want to be the creative person that leads and does everything. And I think when you run a business, the biggest thing you can do is try and facilitate everyone else getting to rise up. And so very early on, I gave the creative studio to my creative director, who's now my executive creative director, Stephen Haddon. And I said, that's yours. You lead the work, all of that is yours. I'm going to grow a brand. And so
So if that's when you were 30, what stage are you there? Are you 30?
That's probably year 2, so that's 16 people or thereabout. It was really fast to that point. It was
and
like a blur.
so basically letting go of the reins at that point to go and run the business.
Yeah, so I gave him
cool.
I gave him control of the studio, and I said, you concentrate on doing the work, because then he's going to have autonomy, he's going to put his stamp on it, and it's going to be, and I'll concentrate on growing a brand, because I was really enjoying that. And because I'm a creative person, like I've got like a co-founder, an operations director who became a shareholder.
Yep.
And we're polar opposite. So I talk about kind of superpower and kryptonite. We've all got one, right? And often we're taught to not talk about what we're great at. But I like to think it's really good early on as possible to figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then try and find people around you that complement you. So my chief operating officer, Stephen, now, we're polar opposite, but we get on, we work greatly together, because he's like finance, operations, get shit done, whereas I'm ideas and creative, and if it was left to me, it would be a disaster. But it worked really well, and I think that was like early on, someone said to me, if you're going to run a business, Andrew, and grow a brand and grow a business, you need to have an empty desk. And I say that, you've probably heard that story before, but like
later.
But it was a really great bit of advice that he gave me, that if you're running a business, you have an empty desk. And what he meant by that was, eventually as you grow your business, you should find someone better at every single task around you until eventually you've got nothing to do. So if something lands, and I've always got something to do, unfortunately there's never the case, but if something lands on my desk now, if there's something operational, I go, Stephen. If there's something creative, someone's there, something new business, boom, boom. So you just become a conductor, and conducting all the different parts. And that's when you truly own a business rather than owning a job. But it's not to say that having a business is right for everyone, because I've met a lot of people on my journey where being a freelancer is the right thing. So it's not, I don't want to put that message out that, I think there's a message in today's world where it feels like everyone has to be an entrepreneur and create a business, and I do not think it's right for every single person. because it's a very different journey depending on how you're made up inside.
Brilliant. I've seen a couple of people like nodding away there. So. Speaking a lot of sense. With regards to, you mentioned new business.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found really interesting when I was speaking to you is that in terms of new business, Made Brave doesn't do any cold calling, any outreach. You don't have a sales team that go out to the market to sell Made Brave services. Every bit of business comes into the business through you, your personal brand, the public speaking that you do, and the events, and that's right, everything is inbound.
Yeah, it's a mixture of my stuff, the personal brand stuff, all the LinkedIn stuff, the kind of doing this,
Yep.
and then kind of everything the Made Brave brand is doing. So we try to kind of put out what we believe in, and I suppose that's kind of what I did in the early days. Sometimes people say to me, yeah, but Andrew, you're an agency, surely you just let the work talk for yourself. And I totally agree. I think that's a given, and I think in any business, any product or service, that bit needs to be perfect, but then put that aside, right? And that will do work. That will bring referrals, that will bring people. But if we want to create a brand over time, this is a layer on top that's going to create something unique that's not this. Because in the UK, there's 22,000 agencies, 86,000 in America, I believe, somewhere around that number. And you need people to remember your brand. So I always thought, I'm going to create a brand that everyone will remember, and everyone, when someone asks for some sort of campaign or some sort of content, they think about Made Brave.
Yep.
And so I set myself a target like early on. I said, I'm going to talk to everyone in Scotland at one point. And it was a stupid thing, but it just gave me like this sort of vision, this job that I had to do. And so in the early days, like you should have seen my diary in the early days, I was like talking everywhere. Bar mitzvahs, weddings, funerals, I would pop up. I had £1,000, 2-week-old baby. But like, it was so...
I had £1,000 2-week-old baby.
But you have to get out and tell you, like, no one's going to tell it for you in the early days, right? You know, you've got, if you start something, you've got to tell that story. And what was really amazing about it was, I used to be terrible. Like, used to be petrifying. I'm still nervous, right, sitting here in front of you. It's quite intimidating, all these faces.
It's the height.
It's the height, I know, yeah, and how close they are. But like, what getting out and talking, and it'll do amazing for you in your business, is like doing this, you get comfortable in your own skin. Mm-hmm. And when you talk in public, and actually a podcast is the best hack, right? I've got a podcast now just to chat with a little.
Have you seen this kid?
But no, it's the best hack, right? Because you get to talk to people, you get to learn from them, and you get to hear all the things they did well and not so well. But you get to hone your own thoughts. And I always loved the part of coming out and talking to people, because you then have to say things, and on the preparation to coming to say things, you have to actually think about your own thoughts. So you're thinking, actually, what do I believe in? What are my values? Where am I going? What's my vision? And then when you say things publicly, you then have to hold yourself accountable to it. So I often say things on LinkedIn that are not for the people on LinkedIn. It's actually sometimes for me to hold myself accountable to it. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes I'm talking about culture or something in the business, and sometimes it might not align with exactly where the business is at that moment, because like culture is an organic thing, right? It breathes and changes, and businesses breathe and move and change. And sometimes I'm setting it as a vision for, well, if I say it, I'm going to make it, I'm going to keep saying it like that. Or it's a message for people in my team, or it's just I'm trying and testing things. And I think as you talk as well, you hone and learn stories. Like, I don't have that many stories. Most of us don't. You know, you've got a few things that you tell when you're at a dinner party. And, you know, doing this, you know, if you've followed me, you'll have heard some of these stories, but I can't change them. They're mine, but they get better because you get better at telling them, and you get better at understanding where the value is for people. I've no idea what you asked.
You were talking about the podcast, personal branding.
Yeah. Oh, business, new business. He wants to get the new business so he can figure out a new business.
Totally. What I was going to say is that you're saying this will be great for me. This is purely selfish, particularly this one, because it's like, right, let's get somebody who's where you want to go, get them in and pick their brains. So that's exactly what I'm looking to do. Yeah.
So the point I give to you then, right, is for this is, and it's a long game when you're growing a business. You can't think about, you know, you have to think something. There's long and short, right? You've got to think about this month's wages because they're always there. But I've always done talking because you never know where it takes you. A great example of that is during the pandemic. I don't know if anyone found that stressful. I found it slightly stressful when you employ lots of people and you've got a business to run. slightly stressful. Honestly, it was a terrible time, right?
So can I did you not take that? Did you not open that office 3 months before lockdown?
Yeah, literally. I'd invested all this money, and I was like, this is brilliant. Look at the office; it looks great. It's so the vision we've had. And then my office, he's like, I think we should look at the news. There's this thing happening, and I was like, blow over. It's absolutely fine. And then literally, I was having dinner with my friends with tears down my eyes, thinking this is all over. Literally.
I sent 500 people on a boat to Amsterdam.
Really?
Boogie on the boat. They're like, we need to cancel. I was like, no, we don't. On the boat. On the boat. You're not getting anywhere. Nobody's getting money back. On the boat. On the boat.
Oh.
And they were like, people.
Here's your
people
mask.
Were, no,
Here's your
people,
mask.
that was before all that. People were getting like stranded on boats. They were locking people on boats. And I was like, let my people off the boat.
Oh.
Aye.
Yeah, so it was, I think we'll all agree. I mean, I'm sure we've all had, we had our own challenges in that time, but, specifically for me, at that time, my pipeline just got cut, all these phone calls, and everyone had it, didn't they? This project's been cancelled, this one's been cancelled, this one's been cancelled, and that pipeline's disappearing in front of me, and, when you've got a business, you've got hard costs that just do not disappear, and so I was in a bit of a panic, and then a couple of months in, you're firefighting, you're doing everything. I'm on LinkedIn waving, trying to make any sort of noise I could. So
You doing mentor calls?
What's that?
You were doing mentor
I was
calls
doing
at that
mentorship.
point?
Well, yeah, that's good. I think in the pandemic, I went through real panic first, right? And I was real panic. I was really worried. And I think it's important to share these things because you often see the side of running a business, entrepreneurship, and think it's all great. It's like there's a lot of stress that goes on behind the scenes, and it's important to talk about that because I've seen a lot of friends recently with businesses really suffer from stress, and I think it's important to be able to do that, and we should do it. And yeah, we tried to turn it from panic. I said to the team, look, we're not going to panic our way through a pandemic. Let's try and lead our way through it. And Made Brave's kind of purpose, if you like, is to inspire creativity in everyone, right? So if I do my job today, hopefully I inspire some creativity or bravery in you. And I said, my creative director, Stephen, said to me actually, he said, Andrew, because he could see the panic in me, he said, our purpose, let's live our purpose. And I went, you're bloody right. So we did mentorship and we tried to help as many people. And what happens when you help people? They help you back, right?
Yep.
So good juju comes back to you and it keeps...
And on that, really putting that into practice, you literally started a fund or a group for the creative services and freelancers at that point too.
Yeah, we created the Creative Industry COVID Support Group, very catchy title, but it said what it did on the tin, and I think 4,000 people joined in a week, which showed how everyone was feeling.
And people were sharing briefs on there and everything, like solid work that people could
We were
then
putting
do
briefs that were
and
too small for us at Made Brave to give to other people.
Seen
People
that.
were putting jobs, it was great, and it was a little gang hut for
Yep.
creative people to come together, and it gave me a sense of purpose, so it got me out of my bed every morning and started to think, right, there's a way out of this. And yeah, I really enjoyed it, and the amount of goodwill that came back to me was great. And it kind of led on to, we were at a point and I was thinking, God, we've still not got enough business here to ride the next wee while. And I got a phone call. Hi, Andrew. I saw you talk in 2015. And I've loved your agency. I've followed your journey, followed the story since then. Would you pitch for our account in 2 weeks? Absolutely. He said, do you not want to know what it is? No, we'll pitch. Yep, we're on it. And do you not want to check your studio's busy enough? No, we've done it. And so we went for it, and it's now our biggest account.
Really? Brilliant.
It's now our biggest account. It came from a talk, like this.
5 years ago.
Yeah, and so I would encourage you, if you can get out your comfort zone, if you can talk, you just never know where it leads. And through talking, they level up as well, because you never know who's in that audience, and someone might go, oh, you could be the speaker for my event.
Yep.
Early on, we had Google Digital Garage came from, I did a talk, and then there was a really stressed employee, a team member at Google who had to run Google Digital Garage in Scotland, and she met with me and she said, oh, I've got to run this whole thing, I've no idea, I don't know anyone up here. And I went, well, we could run it for you. Would you do that? So we ran the whole Google Garage, and we got the Google badge, and then from then we got to Unilever and so on and so forth. And so it just every time it steps up and steps up. So There's a lesson in there somewhere.
No, definitely. I remember you saying. I remember hearing you say that every talk you done led to either a piece of business or another talk. I had a talk last month, and I was like, "Where's this piece of business or other talk? Where's it coming?"
It'll come.
Someone said to me,
6 years.
can you come on a podcast and talk about this?" And I was like, "There they are. I just need to keep following the model." Brilliant.
Yeah.
You mentioned stress on work-life balance. I've seen I think it was a post on LinkedIn. You talk about like not sacrificing weekends.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that to build a big business and to do really, really well, you have to be on it all the time. But you kind of challenge that.
Yeah, challenge it. I think it's like there's a balance, right? Everything about life is a balance. You can answer any question with that. See if anyone ever asks you questions. It's balance. No, but like there's no getting away from starting a business. You have to work hard, right? You have to put yourself in a place for luck to happen, and that usually comes from being brave, putting yourself in places, and working hard. And that was the first few years of Made Brave. But I was also acutely aware that when I had my son Finn, that I didn't want to be the dad that looked back and went, "Ah, shit, I missed the whole beginning."
Yeah.
So, you see entrepreneurs and people on LinkedIn and they get up at 4 a.m. and they go for yoga. I'm not that guy, right? But what I did do quite early on is I thought,
Jamie is that guy.
there he is. He's putting us all to shame, making us all look bad. No, what I did do was I realised that in the first year or so, I was doing lots of late hours, and I thought, this is not sustainable for my mental health. It's not sustainable for my family. I don't want that to be the culture that happens in Made Brave, and it does happen in businesses, right? So I started to go, I'm not going to read emails after 6 o'clock.
I remember seeing that. Yep.
And the thing about it was, what's great about it is that, you peek at emails after 6 o'clock, right? 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you're with your family, 4 a.m, right? And what happens is, you open up your inbox, oh my God, someone's handed their notice in. And you're like, oh my God, someone's handed their notice in, right? So suddenly you're ignoring your family, you're on the phone, and they've handed their notice in. Or that job is, the client's pulling out of that project, or, oh my God, right? And your whole night is now that, and if you've done it on a Friday, and you've caught it on Friday night, your Friday night's ruined, your whole weekend's ruined, and people will usually give you bad news on a Friday to get it off their chest. Yeah. We'll just tell them today, and then they go off to their weekend, kind of having a great time. They do it every time, don't they? I'm like, if you're giving me bad news, give me it on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock, because then I can deal with it and I can get on with stuff, right? So I realised, well, right, see if I just don't look at my emails after 6, well, I'll not know of that bad news. I'll have a great time with my family. I'll do something fun. I'll wake up in the morning at 9 o'clock and I'll go, oh God, and then I'll deal with it. So, I've just tried to live by that. Now, don't get me wrong, I do peak sometimes, and I go, oh, I wish I didn't do it, and I did it, but I really try to live by that. And importantly, and it's not possible for every business, but I did go, I'm not going to work Saturday and Sunday. That's time with Finn and that's time with Pam, and just try and keep to those rules. So
I always remember Dave, what I worked at Forth, said to me, I got a work phone, it's absolutely revolutionary, because he used to have his work emails all coming through on his personal phone. He's like, I've got a work phone, you can put it in a drawer.
Maybe that's what I need to do.
So, very quickly, let's talk about TikTok, because you're a TikTok sensation with your son.
He's a TikTok sensation.
He's a TikTok sensation.
I'm trying to be.
Right,
okay.
so TikTok entertaining dad.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about how that came about, and then also the impact that it's then had on your business, because I think there's a story there.
Yeah. During lockdown, like every parent and every child in the whole of the world, we all downloaded TikTok, and I started creating content with him because you had nothing else to do, did you? And then we, like everyone else, we got bored of it. He got distracted, I got distracted, and I stopped. And then in the summer there, I said, it was a really nice sunny day, and we've got this garden. I dug a huge hole. It was the worst 3 days of my life. Put a trampoline in the ground. I had blisters, and it was terrible, right? But I've got this trampoline sunk in the ground. It's a brilliant idea if you've got kids, right? And I built a climbing frame beside it, and it was a really sunny day. And I said, Finn, let's do something for TikTok. It's been ages. We've not done a single thing. So he swung off this thing, bounced, did a flip, and then walked off backwards as if it was. And I went, wait a minute, I'm going to reverse that. So I reversed it, and I was like, that's instant viral, Finn. I said, I put it on. It got 15 million views on TikTok, right? I put it on Instagram. It got 71.5 million views.
No.
Now, to put that into context, last year, from what I can tell, having read loads online, that was the 16th most viewed reel in the world, ahead of
Wow.
Kim Kardashian, right? And I'm like, Finn, look at this thing. And from that day on, we just kept on. I said to him, look, we've got a small moment in time, because when you get that many views on something, right, you've got people looking at the profile day in, day
Yep.
out. And I thought, we have got a very small amount of time to go figure out what it is they love. And I was like, first of all, I thought it's the reverse stuff. Then start posting stuff. Then I was like, kids love satisfying videos. Like there's like Play-Doh and all sorts of stuff.
Aye.
We tried
Kinetic
all that.
sand.
Kinetic sand, that's it,
Aye,
exactly.
aye.
And I searched all that. And then we started creating content together. And I went, oh, wait a minute, Finn. The father-son thing
Yep.
is really good. And then I thought, actually, this is a win-win. I get to teach him about creativity. I get to be creative, which I don't often get all the time in my job, because sometimes I'm having to do the businessy side. I was getting to teach him about how to deal with negative messages. I was getting to deal
Yep.
with comments and how to reply in a
Love
way. And then the great thing started to happen is brands started to come in and ask us if we do work. Now, the really funny thing is, because they come in, they don't realize I own an agency. So they're like, oh, can you create some content for our brand? And literally, they've got me negotiating with them, right? So I'm like, what is your demographic? And they're like, oh, grown-up questions. And it's quite a funny story, as I reached out to a brand earlier last year, and I thought they'd be perfect for us. And it was a brand in America, and they said, yeah, come on a call with the VP of something. I said, right, okay, we'll come on this call. And I brought Finn on the call with me. And so I was like, tell us your story. So like, oh, we started this business in lockdown. It's grown hugely over America. I was like, what's the biggest challenges you've got? We're struggling to get into the UK. Finn's like this, money. Money. And I'm like, mute. Chill. and the guy can see me talking to Finn. And I'm like, so I'm unmuting and he's laughing. And I'm like, Finn's just wondering what your budget is for content. And so I'm like, Finn, you wait till he tells us your problem, and then we figure out a solution. Then we give him our fee.
That's amazing.
But no, really, it's been great actually to teach him all that stuff,
Yep.
and we're having a blast. We're
Brilliant.
just
So that's
enjoying it.
Entertaining Dad on TikTok, if anyone's
And
just saw
Instagram.
and Instagram. So finally, the final question is a very selfish question. What advice would you give to a 31-year-old who's recently started an agency that basically wants to build the next Made Brave? Spoiler alert, it's me.
Well, I'd say you're doing pretty well already. I think.
Cheers.
I think
Appreciate
like
that.
doing this already is really admirable, and kind of is going to set you up for success, because business only survives around having a group of people around you that'll look after you in good times and hard times. You're learning from people. This is you, so this is so I think for me, you need to find a tribe of people that will look after you.
Yep.
Especially if you're a sole founder, if you run a business on your own, it can get very lonely. So you just need people, and you need to look out. And I think that's what I found with Scotland specifically, is that I was intimidated when I started because I didn't know anything, but you just ask, and if you're struggling for anything, just ask, and if you're actually struggling, talk to people and tell people as well. And I think I found the business community in Scotland really great. And the great thing about Scotland, and I always say this, is that we might be a small country, but we're mighty. And what's really powerful is that we're tiny. And why is that powerful? Because if you get any sort of success very, very quickly, you get in the room with other people that have had success. And they know all the successful people in London, they're the only ones in New York, and so you can move around the world very quickly. Whereas if you imagine you're in America and you're trying to climb the way to get to those tables, we can get there really early. So, don't be afraid to be ambitious. Put Scotland on the map. We're as good as anyone else on this planet.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was brilliant. Loved that. We've got time for a couple of questions, Q&A. If anyone has any questions for Andrew, stick your hand up. Jamie's going to come around with a microphone. If anyone's any questions. Sarah.
Hiya, thank you.
You told me you weren't going to ask a question.
I prepared the most grilling ones. You said you'd got your personal brand and then the Made Brave brand. Has there been any times where they didn't align or there was a conflict of interest, and how did you navigate that?
Great question.
Good question. Yeah, it's an interesting one because you're always trying to figure out where does the business stop and where do I begin. And there's overlap between. I don't think there's conflict because I think, with Made Brave, the values of Made Brave have been kind of sparked from my personality. So I often think, I actually had Claude Silver, who is Gary Vaynerchuk's head of heart, on my podcast, and she was kind of talking about that, the VaynerMedia. Gary V, he creates the spark of the culture there, and then the team take over and build the fire, if you like. So that's kind of been the same with Made Brave. There's a kind of, my heart's in that, and it's come over. But as I've grown, I've tried to separate a little bit out my personal brand because I want it to live after Made Brave, and I want to have a little bit of me in there as well. So kind of process I went through for that, and because it's quite hard, isn't it? You open up LinkedIn, you go, what the fuck am I going to write? It's really intimidating, and all these people. I was in the LinkedIn Accelerator program recently with 100 people, and oh my god, they're all brilliant, and they all have and I was like, so a good tip is if you're trying to figure out what to do for your own, is get 4 or 5 post-it notes and figure out what are 4 or 5 things, themes, content buckets, I kind of call them, of things I would talk about. So when you turn up at Andrew Dobie on LinkedIn, I'll talk about branding creativity. 1 post-it note, stick it up. Second one, I will talk about my entrepreneurial journey because I know it and it's the truth, right? Stick it up. Number 2. 3, I talk about leadership and culture because I'm interested in them, I'm passionate about them, and they make me get better at them. And then I talk about Finn and TikTok and anything else. So I don't move outside those lanes. And so I think if you're trying to create your own personal brand, I say it in that sort of thing, but it's kind of do that. It doesn't mean you can't talk about everything or anything, but the more you stay in your own lane, well, suddenly if someone's doing an event on creativity, who are they going to ask? You're going to come and they're going to think of me first, and so you want them to think about each of you. The great news is your story can start wherever you want it. My story today started at 30 years old, although we went back, right? But, your story could start, I heard a talk today and it set me off on a path, and that could now be the beginning of your business journey or your personal brand.
Love that.
Long way of kind of saying that.
That's great, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Best one. Thank you.
Hi. Pretty fantastic business, how you started up from nothing, being able to scale it to the global agency that you're running just now. Where does success lie for you in this coming year?
Getting through it.
Yeah. I mean, it's been quite a challenging year. I'll not lie. There was a sniff of recession there. You saw the tech companies restructuring. And that ripples right the way down. The space, because as soon as people hear recession, what's the first things that get removed? Training and marketing, because they're nice to have. So. I think, I've had quite a challenging year in terms of behind the scenes, some of the business stresses that come with that. So I think, for me, happiness is always just finding the balance and and sometimes I think when you're running a business, the stress can go that way, or you can get into your happy place. And so it's always try to seek that middle ground. Hope that's an answer.
All the best.
Brilliant. One more.
So it's really difficult when you're running something for yourself, doing it for yourself. What has been the biggest oh no moment? Because we all focus on what's been the biggest oh no moment, and how did you bounce back, and how's that helped you be resilient as a business from there?
Where do you want me to start? I've got more. I've got another 3 hours on this. I think as creative people or as entrepreneurial people, we're often like magpies. And when new things come along, oh yeah, I'll do that. And I think that's probably been my downfall as part of my journey, is that I've often taken on too much, too many departments, too many businesses, too many opportunities. And I think if I could give you one advice that I would give to starting at the beginning, try and create as narrow a focus as possible. Every successful, and I know successful is subjective, but I mean everyone that's kind of had successful businesses have tended to be ones who've found focus and clarity, because you can, it saves you having that. I think when you've got too much going on, your brain's then got too much going on and everything becomes harder. So kind of trying to find that kind of sharp
On
point.
the flip side of that, did you not say that you had 100 clients and you went, right, this is too many clients, we need to work this down, and a year later you had 109?
I know, yeah. It literally did happen. I'm thankful to say we're now down at about 15, 20, which is about the right size and amount of clients that a company like mine should have. But yes, we did do that. We said, we've got too many, and they went up.
Brilliant. Well, honestly, thank you so much. That was brilliant. So
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very
I
much
appreciate
for
it.
coming
Thanks
on.
for coming out.
Cheers.